The town of Havenwood was just that, a haven, nestled deep in a valley, surrounded by rolling hills and whispering trees. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. Life moved at a slow, comfortable pace, marked by the changing seasons and the familiar routines of its inhabitants. The biggest excitement usually involved Mrs. Gable's prize-winning pumpkins at the annual fall fair or the occasional runaway cow from Farmer McGregor's pasture. Children played freely in the streets, their laughter echoing through the quiet air. Neighbors chatted over picket fences, sharing gossip and offering a helping hand. The local diner, Millie's, was the heart of Havenwood, serving up hearty breakfasts and endless cups of coffee. It was a place where stories were told, friendships were forged, and time seemed to stand still. The war, though fought far away, had cast a long shadow over Havenwood. Several of the town's sons had answered the call to duty, and their absence was keenly felt. Even after the war ended, the memory of those lost lingered in the air, a somber reminder of the world beyond their peaceful valley. But life in Havenwood, for the most part, had returned to its familiar rhythm. The townsfolk had found solace in their community, supporting each other through the difficult times and cherishing the simple joys of everyday life. They believed in the power of kindness, the importance of tradition, and the enduring strength of their small-town spirit. Little did they know that the quiet facade of Havenwood was about to be shattered by the arrival of a stranger, one who would challenge their beliefs and force them to confront the ghosts of their past. Among those who felt the war's sting most keenly was Sarah. 5 years had passed since she received the news of John's death, a telegram delivered by a solemn-faced officer that shattered her world. John, her childhood sweetheart, her husband, the father of her dreams, was gone. Sarah had been a vibrant, cheerful woman, known for her infectious laughter and unwavering optimism. But the war had stolen a part of her, leaving a quiet sadness in her eyes. She still lived in the same small cottage they had shared, surrounded by memories of their life together. The garden, once John's pride and joy, was now Sarah's sanctuary. She spent hours tending to the roses he had planted, their fragrant blooms a bittersweet reminder of his love. She worked as a librarian at the town's small library, surrounded by stories of love, loss, and hope. It was a quiet, solitary job, but it suited her. The books were her companions, offering her solace and escape. She found comfort in the familiar routines of her life. The morning walk to work, the afternoon tea with Mrs. Gable, the evening spent reading by the fireplace. Though the pain of John's loss never truly faded, Sarah had slowly begun to rebuild her life. She had found strength in her community, in her friends, and in her own resilience. She was a survivor, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. But beneath the surface, a flicker of hope still remained, a secret longing for the life she had lost. A life that was about to be unexpectedly, impossibly resurrected. The arrival of the stranger would not only shake Havenwood, but would also force Sarah to confront her deepest fears and desires, and decide if she was ready to open her heart again. The stranger arrived on a Tuesday, stepping off the afternoon bus like a ghost from a forgotten dream. He carried a worn leather suitcase and wore a simple, faded coat that seemed too heavy for the late summer weather. He stood for a moment, taking in the familiar sights of Havenwood, the general store, the church steeple, the welcoming sign that proclaimed Havenwood, a place to call home. It wasn't just that he was a newcomer that caused the stir. Havenwood didn't get many visitors, especially not ones who looked like they had seen the world and carried its weight on their shoulders. It was something else, something unsettlingly familiar about his face. Old Mrs. Henderson, who had been tending her flower boxes outside the general store, was the first to notice. She squinted, her eyes narrowing behind her thick glasses. "Well now," she muttered to herself, "doesn't he look a bit like?" But she couldn't quite place it. The stranger walked slowly down Main Street, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the townsfolk. He seemed to be searching for something, or perhaps someone. A few people offered polite nods, but most simply stared, whispering amongst themselves. The air crackled with unspoken questions, with a growing sense of unease. Even the children, usually so boisterous, fell silent as he passed, their eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of apprehension. He paused outside Millie's diner, the scent of freshly baked apple pie wafting through the open door. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling, announcing his arrival to the entire town. The buzz of conversation died down, and all eyes turned to the stranger, the man with the familiar face who had suddenly, inexplicably, appeared in Havenwood. The quiet of Havenwood was broken. The past had caught up to it. The silence in Millie's diner was thick enough to cut with a knife. The stranger, oblivious or perhaps indifferent to the stares, approached the counter. Millie, her face etched with curiosity and a touch of apprehension, waddled over to take his order. "Just coffee, please," he said, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down Millie's spine. It was familiar, somehow. He took the coffee to a small table near the window, his eyes scanning the room. He paused, his gaze settling on Sarah, who had been reading at her usual table, oblivious to the commotion. He stood up, his movements slow and deliberate, and walked towards her. Sarah looked up, startled. She recognized the face, the familiar lines around the eyes, the way his brow furrowed when he concentrated. But it couldn't be. It simply couldn't be. He stopped in front of her table, his eyes meeting hers. "Sarah," he said softly, his voice cracking with emotion. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She stared at him, her heart pounding in her chest. It was impossible. "It's me," he continued, his voice barely a whisper. "It's John." A collective gasp swept through the diner. Forks clattered against plates, coffee cups were dropped, and all conversation ceased. Every eye in the room was fixed on Sarah and the stranger who claimed to be her deceased husband. Sarah shook her head, her mind reeling. "No," she whispered, her voice trembling. "John is dead. He died in the war." "I know what you think," he said, stepping closer. "But I'm here. I'm back." The news spread through Havenwood like wildfire. John, Sarah's John, was alive? It was unbelievable, impossible. But there he was, standing in Millie's diner, claiming to be the man they had all mourned and remembered. The town was in shock, and Sarah's world was turned upside down once again. Sarah's mind raced. It was him. It couldn't be him. The resemblance was undeniable. The way he stood, the slight tilt of his head, the crinkle around his eyes when he spoke. It was all John. But John was dead. She had seen the official report, the list of casualties. She had mourned him, grieved for him, and slowly, painstakingly, learned to live without him. This is impossible," she stammered, her voice barely audible above the hushed whispers of the other patrons. He reached out, his hand hovering hesitantly over hers. "Sarah, please, just listen to me." She flinched, pulling her hand away. There was something different about him, too. A hardness in his eyes, a weariness in his posture that she didn't remember. The war must have changed him. But still, "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling. "How can you be here? We were told you were killed." "I know," he said softly. "It's a long story, a complicated one." He looked so much like John, but Sarah couldn't let herself believe it. It was too cruel, too fantastical. It was like a twisted dream, a cruel joke. Yet, despite her skepticism, a tiny flicker of hope ignited within her. What if it was him? What if, against all odds, John had somehow survived? "I need proof," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "I need to know that you are who you say you are." He nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know, and I'm ready to give it to you. I'll tell you anything you want to know." Sarah knew she was walking on dangerous ground. If this man was an imposter, he was playing a cruel game. But if he was truly John, she couldn't bear the thought of turning him away. She had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Sarah decided to test him. "What was the name of her dog when we were kids?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The stranger smiled, a sad, nostalgic smile that tugged at her heart. "Patches," he replied instantly. "A scruffy little terrier with one white ear. You love to dress her up in your doll's clothes." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Only John would know that. She had almost forgotten about Patches, a childhood memory buried deep within her heart. "And what did you say to me the night we got engaged?" she pressed, her eyes searching his for any sign of deception. He hesitated for a moment, then reached out and gently took her hand. "I said, Sarah, you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Will you marry me and make me the happiest man in the world?" His voice was soft, filled with the same love and tenderness she remembered. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes. It was exactly what he had said, word for word. How could he know? He continued, sharing other intimate details about their life together. The secret hiding place they had as children, the silly song they used to sing on road trips, the inscription he had carved into the old oak tree behind their house. Each memory was a painful reminder of what she had lost, but also a tantalizing glimpse of what she might regain. The more he spoke, the more Sarah's skepticism began to crumble. He knew things that no one else could possibly know, things that were deeply personal, uniquely theirs. It was as if he had unlocked a secret vault in her heart, a vault filled with cherished memories and forgotten dreams. But still, doubt lingered. Could he somehow have found out these things? Could someone have told him? Or was it possible, just possible, that this man was truly John, returned from the dead after all these years? The mystery deepened, and Sarah found herself caught between hope and fear, between disbelief and a desperate longing to believe. A wave of memories washed over Sarah, vivid snapshots from her life with John before the war. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk flashback 1 asterisk Sarah and John, young and carefree, are laughing as they decorate their first Christmas tree. John struggles to reach the top, and Sarah playfully teases him. The stranger had mentioned the crooked star John always insisted on placing at the very top, a detail Sarah had almost forgotten. Asterisk flashback 2 asterisk a summer picnic by the river. John is teaching Sarah how to skip stones. She's terrible at it, but he doesn't mind. He wraps his arms around her, showing her the correct way to hold the stone. The stranger had described the exact pattern of the checkered blanket they used, a pattern Sarah's grandmother had sewn. Asterisk flashback 3 asterisk their wedding day. Sarah, radiant in her white dress, walks down the aisle toward John, who is beaming with pride. The stranger had recalled the nervous joke John whispered as she reached the altar, a joke about tripping and ruining her entrance, a secret between them that made her giggle that day. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. These weren't just general memories. They were specific, intimate moments, filled with small details that only John could have known. The way he used to hum off-key while he gardened, the silly nicknames they had for each other, the way he always left the milk carton out on the counter. Each flashback was triggered by something the stranger said, a word, a phrase, a gesture. It was as if he was holding up a mirror to her past, reflecting a life she thought she had lost forever. The memories were bittersweet, a reminder of the joy she had known and the pain she had endured. But they also fueled her hope, whispering the possibility that maybe, just maybe, John had truly returned. The flashbacks made it harder to dismiss him as an imposter. The weight of the evidence was mounting, pulling her closer to a truth she wasn't sure she was ready to face. Was she ready to believe in miracles? Was she ready to open her heart again? The questions swirled in her mind, as turbulent and unpredictable as the storm brewing outside the diner windows. Havenwood was abuzz. The news of a stranger's claim had spread like wildfire, dividing the town into two distinct camps. Some, like Mrs. Henderson, were quick to believe. They saw the resemblance to John, remembered his kind heart and gentle spirit, and wanted to embrace the miracle of his return. "It's a blessing, plain and simple," Mrs. Henderson declared to anyone who would listen, "a second chance for Sarah and a gift for us all." Others were more skeptical, their hearts hardened by the realities of war and loss. They couldn't fathom the possibility of someone returning from the dead, especially after all this time. "It's a cruel hoax," argued Farmer McGregor, John's childhood friend. "Someone's trying to take advantage of Sarah's grief, and we can't let that happen." The debate raged in Millie's diner, at the general store, and over picket fences throughout the town. Accusations were made, friendships were strained, and the once harmonious community was fractured by doubt and suspicion. Some worried about Sarah, fearing she was being manipulated. Others gossiped behind her back, questioning her judgment and sanity. Even those who wanted to believe struggled with nagging doubts. The war had changed people, hardened them. Could John really be the same man after all he had been through? And what if this stranger was indeed an imposter, a con artist preying on their emotions? The division in Havenwood created a palpable tension, a sense of unease that hung heavy in the air. The stranger, oblivious or indifferent to the turmoil he had caused, remained in town, patiently waiting for Sarah to make up her mind. He knew he had a long road ahead of him, but he was determined to prove his identity and win back the woman he loved. The fate of Havenwood and Sarah's happiness hung in the balance, dependent on unraveling the truth. Torn between hope and disbelief, Sarah knew she couldn't simply rely on the stranger's words or the memories he stirred. She needed concrete proof, something tangible to either confirm or deny his identity. Driven by a desperate desire to know the truth, she embarked on her own investigation. She started by revisiting places that held significance in her life with John. She walked to the old oak tree behind their house, the one the stranger had mentioned, and searched for the inscription he claimed to have carved. The years had weathered the bark, but with careful examination, she found it. S+J forever. Her heart skipped a beat. Next, she rummaged through old boxes in the attic, searching for letters, photographs, anything that might offer a clue. She found a box filled with John's belongings from the war, his uniform, his dog tags, a few tattered letters. She hesitated, her hand trembling as she reached for them. It was like reopening a wound, revisiting a pain she had tried so hard to bury. She read the letters, searching for any detail that might shed light on the stranger's story. She scrutinized the photographs, comparing the stranger's face to John's, looking for subtle differences or similarities. She even visited Farmer McGregor, hoping he might remember something specific about John, something only a close friend would know. But McGregor, still convinced the stranger was a fraud, was unhelpful, his bitterness clouding his judgment. With each step of her investigation, Sarah's emotions became more complex. The stranger's knowledge of their past continued to amaze her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that a piece of the puzzle was missing. She was determined to find that missing piece, to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The piece of Havenwood was gone. It was replaced by a desperate search for facts. The old grandfather clock in Sarah's living room had stopped working years ago. John had always been the one to fix it, possessing a knack for clockwork that Sarah never understood. She had tried to get it repaired several times, but no one in town seemed to have the expertise. One afternoon, as Sarah was sifting through John's old tools, the stranger walked in. He had been staying at the local inn, keeping a low profile, but he often found excuses to be near Sarah. Having trouble? He asked, noticing her frustration with the tools. Sarah sighed. It's this old clock. John used to fix it, but... Her voice trailed off, the memory of John filling her with a familiar ache. Let me take a look, the stranger offered. Sarah hesitated, but something in his eyes, a quiet confidence, convinced her to let him try. He examined the clock carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. He asked Sarah for specific tools, using terms she had only ever heard John use. He worked for hours, meticulously cleaning and adjusting the intricate gears. Sarah watched him, mesmerized. It was as if she was watching John again, his hands moving with the same skill and precision. Finally, with a gentle click, the clock sprang back to life. The pendulum began to swing, and the familiar chime echoed through the room. Sarah stared in disbelief. "How did you do that?" she asked, her voice filled with awe. The stranger smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "John taught me," he said simply. He loved clocks. Sarah was more confused than ever. How could this man, whoever he was, possess such specific knowledge and skill? It was one thing to recall childhood memories, but this was different. This was a talent, a learned ability that seemed impossible to fake. The clock chimed again, its rhythmic ticking a constant reminder of the mystery that surrounded him. Was he truly John, or was he something else entirely? While the town was preoccupied with the mystery of the returning stranger, a shadow lingered in the background. A shadow named George Abernathy. George was a local businessman, successful and respected, but also known for his ruthless ambition. He had always harbored a secret desire for Sarah, a desire that was amplified after John's death. He had offered her comfort and support, hoping to win her heart, but Sarah had always politely declined, her grief a shield against any new attachments. Now, with the stranger's arrival, George saw his chances slipping away. If this man was truly John, George's dreams of being with Sarah were shattered. But even if he was an imposter, his presence threatened to disrupt George's carefully constructed life. The town's focus was now on the stranger, not on him. George began to subtly undermine the stranger's credibility, spreading rumors and fueling the skepticism that already existed. He pointed out inconsistencies in the stranger's stories, questioned his motives, and subtly reminded people of the pain and loss they had all suffered. He wanted to turn the town against the stranger, to drive him away and reclaim his position as Sarah's confidant and protector. But George's motives weren't entirely driven by romantic longing. He also had a vested interest in Sarah's property, particularly the land she had inherited from her parents. He had made several offers to buy it over the years, but Sarah had always refused, cherishing it as a link to her family's past. With John back, George's chances of acquiring the land diminished significantly. As Sarah delved deeper into her investigation, George watched her closely, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and calculation. He knew that if the stranger was exposed as a fraud, Sarah would be devastated, but he was willing to risk her pain if it meant achieving his own goals. George Abernathy, the respected businessman, was now a potential antagonist, someone who might benefit from the stranger's deception or, more likely, his disappearance. The town may never be the same. Exhausted but determined, Sarah returned to the attic. She felt drawn back to the box of John's belongings, as if it held a secret she had overlooked. She emptied the contents onto the dusty floor, sifting through the familiar objects once more. Beneath the uniform, tucked inside a faded photograph of Sarah and John on their honeymoon, she found it, a small, folded letter. The paper was yellowed and brittle, the ink faded, but the handwriting was unmistakably John's. Her heart pounded as she carefully unfolded the letter. It was addressed to her, but it was never sent. The date was just weeks before he was reported missing. With trembling hands, she began to read. "My dear Sarah, asterisk if you're reading this. It means something has gone terribly wrong. I'm writing this because I can't shake the feeling that I might not be coming back. I've been assigned a special mission, one that's highly classified and incredibly dangerous. I can't tell you the details, but I want you to know that I'm doing this for our country, for our future. Star. Asterisk, if anything happens to me, please don't grieve for too long. Remember the happy times we shared, the love we had. And please, Sarah, promise me that you'll find happiness again. Don't let my absence define the rest of your life. Star. Asterisk, there's something else I need to tell you. Before I left, I hid something important in the old oak tree, the one we carved our initials into. It's a small wooden box containing a map and some documents. They could be valuable, not just to me, but to others. If I don't return, please find them and deliver them to Colonel Davies at the address I've written on the back of this letter. Star. Asterisk, I love you more than words can say. Always remember that. Star. Your loving husband, John." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. The letter was a revelation, a missing piece of the puzzle. It explained the possibility of his survival, the reason for his absence. But it also raised new questions, new dangers. The mission, the map, the documents. What had John been involved in? And why had this information been kept secret for so long? The stranger started to make a whole lot more sense. Sarah confronted the stranger with the letter. He read it slowly, his expression growing somber. When he finished, he looked at Sarah, his eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and relief. "So, he said softly, you know the truth." He explained that after John's plane was shot down, He wasn't killed. He was captured by enemy forces. He spent years in a prisoner of war camp, enduring unimaginable hardship and torture. He managed to escape, but he suffered a severe head injury that caused him to lose his memory. I remembered nothing, he said. Not my name, not my past, nothing. I wandered for years, trying to piece together who I was. He explained that fragments of his memory would return in flashes, glimpses of a life he couldn't quite grasp. He knew he had a wife, a home, a life worth fighting for, but he couldn't remember the details. Then, a few months ago, he saw a photograph in a newspaper, a picture of Havenwood's annual fall fair. He recognized the church steeple, the general store, the familiar faces of the townsfolk. And then he saw her. Sarah, seeing your picture was like a jolt of electricity, he said. Suddenly, everything started to come back. I remembered your name, our life together, everything. He explained that he had hesitated to come forward, afraid of the reception he would receive, unsure if Sarah would ever believe him. But he knew he had to try. He had to come home. The mission, Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. The map, the documents. It was a secret operation, he explained. Something I can't talk about, even now, but the documents are important. They need to get to Colonel Davies. He had told her the name of the mission and what the documents contained, things that were never released to the public, things only John would know. Sarah was overwhelmed, the pieces of the puzzle finally starting to fall into place. But the danger was far from over. The town was in just as much danger as Sarah was. Sarah and John, now tentatively reunited, went to retrieve the wooden box from the old oak tree. As they dug beneath the roots, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was George Abernathy, his face contorted with anger and desperation. I knew it, he snarled. I knew you were up to something. He lunged at Sarah, trying to grab the letter and the map. John stepped in front of her, shielding her from George's attack. Get out of here, George, John warned, his voice low and dangerous. This doesn't concern you. It concerns me plenty, George retorted. I've been waiting for Sarah for years. I won't let you waltz back into her life and take everything I've worked for. A struggle ensued. John, weakened by his years of captivity, was no match for George's brute strength. George wrestled the map from John's grasp and began to run. Stop him, John yelled, his voice strained. Sarah, fueled by adrenaline, chased after George. She tackled him to the ground, the map flying from his hand. As they grappled for the map, George revealed his true intentions. That land is mine, Sarah, he hissed. It should have been mine years ago. And with John out of the picture, it finally will be. John managed to catch up, pulling George off Sarah. He pinned him to the ground, his eyes blazing with fury. What do you know about the mission? John demanded. Who sent you? George laughed, a hollow, desperate sound. You think you're the only one who knows about secrets, John? There are people who don't want that map to reach Colonel Davies. People who will do anything to stop you. The confrontation escalated, revealing a web of secrets and betrayals that threatened to destroy Havenwood. The fight was not just for Sarah's heart, but for something much bigger, something that could have national and international implications. The three of them were locked in a deadly game, with the fate of the town hanging in the balance. As John held George pinned, a car screeched to a halt nearby. Two men in dark suits emerged, their faces grim. They were Colonel Davies and another officer. Abernathy, you're under arrest, Colonel Davies announced, his voice stern. You're charged with treason and conspiracy against the United States. George, defeated, was hauled away, revealing the depth of his betrayal. But the real shock came when Colonel Davies turned to John. It's good to see you again, Agent Miller, he said, his voice filled with respect. Sarah stared at John, her mind reeling. Agent Miller? What was going on? Colonel Davies explained that John's real name wasn't John. It was Agent Miller, a highly trained operative who had been working undercover on a top-secret mission. The John persona, their life together, was all part of the cover. The mission was to infiltrate a network of traitors within the government, individuals who were selling classified information to enemy forces. The map and documents contained evidence that would expose these traitors and bring them to justice. The prisoner of war story, the amnesia, It was all a carefully constructed lie, designed to protect his identity and ensure the mission's success. "I'm sorry, Sarah," Agent Miller said, his voice filled with remorse. "I never meant to hurt you, but I had to protect you, to protect the mission." Sarah was devastated. The man she had loved, the life she had shared, it was all a fabrication. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw a flicker of the man she had known, the man she had loved. Was there any truth to their relationship? Was there any part of John still alive inside Agent Miller? Or was he truly a stranger, a master of deception who had played her for a fool? The truth was out, but what would she do with it? Sarah needed time to process the revelation. She walked back to her cottage, Agent Miller following close behind, his face etched with concern. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said softly, "but I hope you can understand why I did what I did." Sarah stopped, turned to face him. "Understand? You lied to me. You used me. Everything I thought I knew about you, about us, was a lie." "That's not entirely true," he countered. "The feelings I developed for you, they were real. The moments we shared, the laughter, the love, it was all genuine. I may have started out pretending, but I fell in love with you, Sarah. I truly did." Sarah searched his eyes, trying to discern the truth. Was it possible to separate the agent from the man? Could she forgive him for the deception, for the pain he had caused? She thought about the past 5 years, the loneliness, the grief, the slow process of rebuilding her life. And then she thought about the past few days, the hope, the confusion, the renewed sense of possibility. She realized that even though their relationship had been built on a lie, something real had grown between them. A connection, a bond that transcended the deception. "I don't know what to do," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again." Agent Miller stepped closer, gently taking her hand. "I understand," he said. "I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, but I'm willing to earn your trust, to prove to you that my feelings are real. Just give me a chance." Sarah looked at him, her heart torn between anger and love, between resentment and hope. The choice was hers, to reject the stranger who had shattered her world, or to accept the possibility of a new future, a future built on honesty and trust. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and made her decision. "Help me find the John the First knew," she said. "Prove to me there's some realness in you." Agent Miller, true to his word, worked tirelessly to earn Sarah's trust. He shared stories about his childhood, his training, his dreams for the future, peeling back the layers of deception to reveal the man beneath the agent. He helped her understand the complexities of his mission, the sacrifices he had made, and the guilt he carried for the pain he had caused her. He showed her the dedication to duty, the patriotism that was at his core, but he also showed her the human being who was in love with her. Slowly, tentatively, Sarah began to see a glimmer of the man she had fallen in love with, the man she had mourned. The man who loved to garden, to hum off-key, to leave the milk carton out on the counter. The town of Havenwood, initially divided and suspicious, slowly began to accept the truth. They learned about Agent Miller's bravery, his sacrifice, and his unwavering commitment to protecting their country. They saw the genuine love he had for Sarah, the remorse he felt for deceiving her. George Abernathy's betrayal shocked the town, serving as a stark reminder that danger could lurk even in the most familiar places. The experience brought the community closer together, fostering a renewed sense of unity and trust. Agent Miller completed his mission. The traitors were exposed, and the nation was safe. But his heart remained in Havenwood, with Sarah. In the end, Sarah made a choice to forgive Agent Miller, to embrace the possibility of a new future with him. It wasn't easy, but their love was strong enough to overcome the deception, to bridge the gap between their two worlds. Havenwood, forever changed by the stranger's arrival, slowly returned to its peaceful rhythm. But it was a different kind of peace, a peace born of understanding, forgiveness, and a renewed appreciation for the simple joys of life. Sarah and Agent Miller, hand in hand, walked through the town, greeted by smiles and nods of acceptance. They had found their way back to each other, not as John and Sarah, but as Agent Miller and Sarah, ready to face the future together, with honesty, trust, and love as their guide. The clock chimed in Sarah's house, marking their new beginning.